the challenges we're facing today as a society also come from the fact that we've just failed to produce full-fledged adults. People who take responsibility, people who find themselves as a integral individual going into a society. I'm not married, I don't have kids, I don't have a house, I'm 34. So this emerging adulthood is really dragging along. And I feel like we were just talking about this, changing the way that we frame or define maturity. What does that look like to be an adult in today's society? So we don't trust our neighbors, we don't trust the government, politicians, the Supreme Court, companies, we barely trust what we see. So people are increasingly becoming skeptical. Don't mingle with strangers. Go out of your house, put your blinders on, go to work, do your thing, come back, because there's just so much to handle.
This is the Human Future Podcast, where we explore the intersection of technology and spirituality with some of the world's brightest minds. Together, we paint a vision of the desirable future and discuss the actionable steps to make that vision a reality. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Welcome. Thank you for being here. This is awesome. We just met, 4 days ago?
That's right.
Had an amazing deep dive conversation on the topics
Middle of lunch.
Both care about, and I thought it would be a perfect, amazing opportunity to invite you on the show. So, and now you're here. So thank you.
Thanks, Kirill. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here. And I'm very excited to continue our deep dives. It's incredible when you find someone that you can go into the unspoken areas of our lives right away without having any sort of background or rapport. So it's been a delight, and I look forward to our conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So why don't you give us a little short intro of who you are and what you're working on, and maybe how you got to work on this stuff, like maybe a pre-story of what led you to work on this problem.
Wow. Okay. Sure. So,
yeah.
So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico to immigrant parents. And I think that's a very important key piece of information in my story. I think growing up, I was very privileged to the way that I was born in Puerto Rico while my parents came from Cuba, in a communist country where they had very limited sort of opportunities, and everything was taken away from them at some point. So me being brought up in Puerto Rico gave me a great sense of privilege and being grateful to be born in U.S. land, which granted me a passport and now opened up a whole world of possibilities to me. So I'm very grateful that I was born in U.S. territory. And, growing up, I didn't have much, but I never missed anything. My parents really worked hard to make sure that I didn't have to go through what they went through. But still, things weren't quite handed out to me in a silver platter. So I had to be very, I had to be very intentional about the way that I went about life. And I had to create opportunities for myself with a very strong belief that I could really accomplish anything I set my mind out to do. And I went through the education system. I had an incredible opportunity to be part of one of the best high schools in Puerto Rico with a lot of sacrifice, from my parents. And, going to Colegio San José, which was the high school that I went in Puerto Rico, really opened up a whole new world to me that was completely foreign. Growing up in a family of privilege, these things are so common to you. They're all around you. But when I went to high school, I had an opportunity to go to programs in, Georgetown and travel for the first time outside of the U.S. Or outside of Puerto Rico, and sort of coming from a very small island. Mm-hmm. I think I also had the desire to sort of go out and explore the world and see what was out there, because I felt like I was in a very small sort of pool. Mm-hmm. And, growing up, I was very much involved in church. I come from a very, I would say, a very religious family. And I got a lot of my sense of purpose and a great sense of who I am and what I'm meant to do in the world and sort of my role in the world through the Catholic education. And then I also was part of Boy Scouts. I was an Eagle Scout. I was involved in almost every single student organization you can imagine. And that really forged in me a real strong sense of civic duty. I knew that I was brought into this world to play a part into something much larger than myself from the very beginning. And I wasn't just here to consume, but I was here to actually give to the world some of the talents and some of the things that I was that were inside of me or were given to me. And that really sort of shaped the way that I see the world. And I had an opportunity then got a full tuition scholarship to go to the University of Dayton in Ohio. And that changed my life. I think, I worked really hard we didn't have money for college. So we had to figure out ways in which I could get all the possible scholarships, and all the possible assistance. So I remember when I applied to Georgetown, I brought this binder full of all of these certificates and accolades and reports from all of my involvement, in the community, my countless hours of community service and all that stuff, because I was really trying hard to be seen. I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be respected, and I want to be given the opportunity to be part of the conversation and join that select group of people that were the movers and shakers of the world, that were actually making an impact. So I had an opportunity during college to go all around the world. I went through 3 months in Africa where I did a service project in Togo through the Engineers and Technical Humanitarian Opportunities for Service Learning. That's what ETHOS stands for. And then I did 3.5 months in Asia. So I went to 12 different cities in like China, Laos, Cambodia, Hong Kong, Tibet, and Vietnam. And that gave me a lot of perspective. And it really helped me appreciate sort of the interconnectedness of the world. And I graduated, and when I graduated from college, after I had all this incredible social capital that I had accumulated over the years with all of these incredible organizations and my fraternity and with Beta Theta Pi and all of these different clubs and organizations, that I had a very strong network. I graduated and suddenly I felt so alone. I was in the middle of Dayton, Ohio, and my visa to go work in China as a liaison for the school in the Suzhou Industrial Park. I had studied Chinese for a few semesters. Wasn't approved. And I was forced to stay back and suddenly rethink my entire plan because I was going to move to China. And then I realized, I looked around and I was like, where's everyone? Where are all these people that I used to call my friends, my mentors, my buddies? I mean, I suddenly realized that I no longer had the social infrastructure around me that facilitated my connection to others and sort of my integration into the collective around me. And that really sparked something in me. And like a lot of fresh graduates that, go out into the world and realize that what they sold to them in college and all throughout their sort of journey in the education system, that they're going to land this incredible job and they're just going to go out there and take on the world, wasn't quite happening. I started looking for opportunities to make a living, and pay my bills. So I went into the luxury industry for 10 years, took a bit of a detour, and find myself one day at a high jewelry event working for Tiffany & Company, where I was planning to sell millions of dollars of jewelry to a few people. And I looked around and people were looking at me like I was just a money bag. All they saw in me was the ability for me to bring to them the money. And it sort of dawned on me that this is not quite where I saw myself going in when I was growing up. I thought I was going to be a diplomat. I thought I was going to be, you know, someone who played an important role in shaping the future of our society. So I went back and I started sort of reweaving my story and figuring out where is it that I took a detour and how can I pick up, where I left off. And it seemed to me that golden thread that sort of weaved every experience that I had had in the past, 34 years of my existence is that I had been part of a community since I can, since I can remember. I just had been part of a group of people or multiple groups of people that validated me, celebrated me, reinforced my vision of the world. They sort of gave me an infrastructure to help me channel and understand not only myself, but the role that I played in the world, and gave me a strong sense of identity and belonging. And a lot of that took shape in shared living communities. So I experienced almost every iteration of communal living. I lived in religious communities. I lived in international learning and living communities in college, fraternity houses, dorms, student housing. I traveled the world in hostels and co-living, purpose-built co-living communities. And then I started to think, wow, with everything that we're experiencing today, this housing and economic crisis, the impending climate crisis, and all this problems of people feeling so lonely and isolated, shared living can really serve as a vehicle to sort of deliver the solutions, not as the end goal or the solution itself, but as a vehicle to deliver the solutions that could potentially address this meta crisis that we're facing. And that's when Civit came to life. At Civit, we're building essentially the digital infrastructure to power the future of shared living. We use AI-powered tools and frameworks that digitally augments spaces to foster collaboration and connection. So we essentially create that wiring in a space that allows for people to not just share, but thrive in a space together.
For sure. Yeah. Could you maybe frame the meta crisis a little bit more, better? Just try to draw kind of the boundaries of it. Like what is happening? How do you define that meta crisis?
Yeah. So I think, Conscious Co-Living did a great job sort of articulating how this all comes together. But essentially, what I believe, and what most people actually agree that's happening, is that we're disconnected, not just from others, but most importantly, we're disconnected from ourselves first. We're disconnected from other people. We're disconnected from place, and we're disconnected from nature. So it's sort of this meta disconnection at the core of our housing and economic crisis, our climate and biodiversity crisis, and our mental and health and loneliness crisis. I think everything has this rootedness into the fact that most people go about the world without a clear idea of who they are and how to participate and what's the role they play. So essentially, especially when it comes to social media and the way that we now attempt to connect with each other, most people fall in the trap of the manipulating algorithms that are set by the people that are trying to monetize our attention, because they don't have a clear idea of what they're looking for. So they essentially go after the shiny objects and whatever really gives them some idea of who they could potentially be that looks good or feels good. Yeah.
So do you think the main reason for the current meta crisis of loneliness, disconnection, anxiety, and all of those things comes from innovation in, basically social media engineering and basically figuring out how to steal your attention and sell you more things? And is that the main issue, or is there other bigger reasons for this meta crisis? How would you say it?
I think that's definitely a major component.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think that is the only reason why we're here. But I think technology has amplified. And I think from a systems perspective, one of the major areas in which we've identified that there has been a bit of a lag is the education system. So we failed. I feel like a lot of the challenges we're facing today as a society also come from the fact that we've just failed to produce full-fledged adults, people who take responsibility, people who find themselves sort of as a integral individual going into a society. I feel like the education system that's been trapped in the 1960s, we haven't quite changed much since then, has really failed to adapt to the times and the changes in demographics, sort of the new sort of developmental stages that have come up. They've identified, we were talking about this, in 2004 came Coming of Age in America. There was a report that was talking about, this new sort of developmental stage that came up, and it's the emerging adulthood, right? So I feel like what happened is when students come out of college, where they have this collective sense of belonging and identity and sense of purpose, they go out in the world and they don't quite have that next step laid out for them. So, or that next nest, let's say. The nest used to be the nuclear family, starting your own family, getting a house, getting settled in, getting your space, getting married, having kids, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what's happening is for many different reasons, because of rising cost of living and delayed maturation, people just are failing to launch. There's this whole concept of failure to launch in higher education, where students simply take on jobs that are where they're under, they're overqualified for, or jobs that simply don't require a graduate degree just because they have the pressure of starting to pay their student loans. Since 1980 to 2019, there has been a 119% increase in college tuition, while the earnings of 22 to 27-year-olds has increased by 19%. So there's many different factors that play into this. I think mostly is that we're working in survival mode. So when they graduate from college, and this is something that I attempted to initially tackle with my project with what I called the Campus for Life, which was meant to be a transitional workforce housing solution for graduating college students going into the workforce. And it attempted to really cater to this emerging demographic of the emerging adults. So the 22, they're saying it's like from 22 to 29, I think is now well into the 30s. Initially, that was in 2000. So imagine a lot of things have changed since then. But I'm in the 30s. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I don't have a house. So I'm 34. So that this emerging adulthood is really dragging along. And I feel like we were just talking about this, changing the way that we frame or define maturity. What does that look like to be an adult in today's society? But going back to whether this lack of disconnection arises from the innovation in technology and social media and the algorithms, I don't believe that is definitely the root. This is something that has been happening for a while and progressively has been happening. And then just social media exploded it. And it's because we're facing so many pressures, economic pressures. We're also experiencing an erosion in social trust. So we don't trust our neighbors. We don't trust the government, politicians, the Supreme Court, companies. We don't trust, now with AI and deep fakes, we barely trust what we see. So people are increasingly becoming skeptical. They're becoming sort of living on their own. It's almost like don't talk to strangers, don't mingle with strangers, go out of your house, put your blinders on, go to work, do your thing, come back, because there's just so much to handle.
Totally. And do you feel like it's only getting worse, or it's getting worse before it's preparing for a phase shift, something new potentially? Every time before big change, there's some kind of chaos, there's some kind of tension, there's boiling happening, and then the phase shift happening. Is that how you feel about it? Or do you think we still have a long way to go into some new way that's going to be just a lot better for everyone?
That's a great question. And I definitely see that sort of happening in a way, or setting the stage for it. I think there's still yet, because of how the system is created to sort of keep us fragmented and a bit confused, and we fail to reach critical mass for that to happen, or at least it's delaying it, reaching that tipping point when people are going to be like, wait a second, like how would it go? And we reach sort of that collective consciousness where people all wake up. I don't think everyone's going to, obviously everyone's not going to wake up at the same time.
Sure.
We all operate at different levels of consciousness. Some people are way above it and some people are way below it. But I think we're definitely reaching a point where we're starting to see a lot of people waking up and realizing, hey, we're heading in the wrong direction. And it's really interesting because I was reading the book. It's The Upswing, and it's about how America came together a century ago and how we can come together again. And it's the same gentleman. I can't remember his name. He's been widely cited everywhere, but he's the one who talked about the erosion of social capital and the death of the civic society or civil society in America. And Robert Putnam. So he's the one who was talking about how we've lost sort of these centers of gravity and the civic groups and religion and everything in America. And we, in the Gilded Age is when we saw sort of this I movement come together. And he talks about this I curve. And they did a study when they researched, in the books that were written at the time, how many times the we and the I were used.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I feel like we're reaching an inflection point where we are going from the I to the we again. And he actually outlines some of the ways in which we could actually get that to happen. It's just that we're battling some forces that are putting a lot of pressure on us really taking over agency of our existence and sort of claim our power and buy back our stock.
And do you think, looking at it at a larger scale of evolutionary scale, human evolution, the I, we, from my perspective, we are heading into the future where it's going to be we, more dominant. And it's going to be a stable state. It's going to be a state of a more unified Earth, where you are looking at the human species as, let's say, I would love to see a future in which we only have basically, there's no countries, there's just one Earth where humans, yes, there are some kind of boundaries where you can't just go everywhere, the same way you can't go on people's private property type thing, but it's not going to be one big nation over the other and then say, even you call them we, you're here and then they're over there. I would love to see the future in which it's all us, like it's all our neighbors, like we're all one of big unified Earth. Yeah, and that is very optimistic. Yes,
and I agree with that. I would consider myself a realistic optimist. I dream of the same. I believe we are able to do that as well. I think we can get there. Mm-hmm. I do believe, however, that we are at a very critical time for us to decide in which direction we want to go. Is the metaverse, and now I was reading the other day in the Wall Street Journal the AI friends, and it reminds me of the movie Her that was 10 plus years ago, right? We're becoming increasingly intertwined as a society because we have no other choice. Because ultimately with densification, urbanization, increasing population around the world, resource scarcity, environmental pressures, rising cost of living, we're going to be forced to share. It's no longer a choice. We will have to share. And this is exactly why we're sort of trying to create the digital infrastructure to power sharing at a more complex level. It's not just sharing a ride or sharing a vacation home. It's sharing our lives together. It's about grocery shopping in bulk. It's about, sharing, sort of creating units to have access to more resources and more services for a lower price. It's about being able to create more resilient communities and circles. And I think that ultimately we're at that inflection point where we're thinking, okay, do we fight, the movement towards isolation and divisiveness and sort of disjointment of our society? Do we fight it? Or do we actually work it out? Do we affect change? Do we get into the system and we try to change it? Because I think there's a lot of people either running away from it and creating their own little communities where all they do is exploration of their consciousness and they're connecting to themselves, and all they do all day, every day is that we're going to take more acid or ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms, and then all we're going to do is deepen our understanding of ourselves, and that's wonderful. I think there's many applications for psychedelics. I think they could really help us explore a lot of our consciousness and help us connect with each other. But I think there's a moment where you need to realize, okay, I know enough of myself and my place in the world to now go out there and make a change. And we need to come together as a society and do that. And I think that requires us to ground ourselves and disconnect ourselves, I think, temporarily. I think we're going to see a lot of people are already starting to do that. They're coming off of social media or disconnecting from the social networks to be more present, more grounded, to observe the way around them and realize that the real world is right here, right now, and around us. It's not here in some cloud. It's not what you see on a screen. So it's going to require us to temporarily, I feel unplug and come together and start creating alliances and groups where we are to reach a critical mass everywhere and then ultimately change or shift the direction in which we're heading, because you can't fight isolation by creating imaginary AI friends.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack what you've shared. Arguably, we can say that humans become more self-reliant with technology. So, for example, now you can install solar panels on your house. You can self-reliant on energy. Now you can order. So let's say just with your phone, you can order your food being delivered. You don't need necessarily community as much as you used to survive. In terms of, the basic food and shelter type things, yes, you definitely still need human interaction, community, and all of those things that we haven't figured out just yet how to replace or how to synthesize with technology. Maybe we'll never get there. Hopefully we won't. Like, hopefully we will always need this human connection, and technology will not. It will be like. But in any case, this is like the a force that's pulling us the other way. The force that's separating us, because we now can live in the middle of the forest and have a self-sustaining. There are solutions out there already, and I think maybe it is a totally natural progression in our human evolution, because we are maybe preparing to be interplanetary species that colonize other planets and set up new autonomous little island here or there, and then be able to live your life, right? So you don't have to rely on the grid, or you don't have to rely on a large community of people to sustain your life. But there's still component of, yes, you can live on your own somewhere out in the woods, and maybe the food being like drop shipped to you or something like that. But there's still this need for human connection, for deep, authentic expression, for connecting with self and with nature. And you can only do that with conscious mirrors in front of, like, you basically need other humans to evolve on an interpersonal level. Yes, you can do your deeper work, but it all gets tested when you go out in the wild and you actually not confront, but you meet other people that then you notice, have you actually worked through a trauma? Like, are you still being triggered in certain situations? That's how you know, really, if you've done the actual work. I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but you've shared about that. Yeah. What was the last? Do you remember the last comment that you made? I think I wanted to connect that with it, but now as I went a little bit deeper into this topic, now I forgot how to connect it to the.
No. I think we were talking about that inflection point of, are we sort of creating? You see a future, a very optimistic future, right, where it's all about we.
Yes.
And we were talking about, we're in a critical time where we must decide and act collectively to shape the direction in which we're going. And you're saying that a force that's preventing us from doing that is sort of this movement towards getting off the grid,
right,
and disconnecting.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And then I guess to bring it back is, I see that the most advanced technology is the one that's least noticeable, where, technology just facilitates an experience that innately human. Let's say us living in this tribal kind of form where we are surrounded by a community of people in physical spaces, and we don't have phones that's blocking the view from the connection with other people. Technology becomes as unnoticeable as, little fly somewhere. But if whenever you need it, it's there for you to maybe facilitate your connection, or a connection with others, or a connection with yourself or with nature. So I'm all about really conscious use of technology and creating tools and environments and experiences that help us be more present, help us to connect with others more. And that's why I was excited about talking to you about what you guys are working on. It's all also kind of feeding into the same movement of, how do we bring more connection with technology. Technology is a useful component here, because we could do it at scale. We can fix big problem at scale.
Yeah, that's definitely the beauty of technology, and that's why I decided to get into this field, even though I don't particularly come from it, but I realized its power and its reach, right? You mentioned a couple of things that are very interesting. One, you talked about this idea of getting off the grid and sort of the need for community not being perhaps as latent or as important to us now that we are sort of self-sufficient in a way. Or there's this idea of self-sufficiency, right? I think we're already experiencing some of the adverse effects of self-reliance, especially in the United States. It's crazy how we sort of glorify the individualistic approach to things, like the self-sufficiency concept. Because in Forbes, you would see the 50 or the, whatever self-made billionaires, and everybody is sort of glorifying these people who seem to rise, to an incredible level of wealth all by themselves. And you ask yourself, like, nobody is self-made.
Of course.
Nobody. You literally need two people to make one person so far, or at least the biological components of two people. And then on top of that, you can't come out of the womb or wherever we might come out of in the future self-sufficient. You need to be fed. You need to be loved. You need to be sheltered. You need to be catered for. You are completely relying on another human being to bring you to life and raise you. So this whole idea of self-sufficiency, it's completely artificial. Like, it's just this idea that we've created to sort of give us a sense of false empowerment, where we foolishly believe that we can live completely off the grid and disconnected from everyone. Because even if you get a cottage in the middle of the wild, guess what? You're subject to climate change. So you're still going to experience the adverse effects of weather. You might be displaced like the other billion people that by 2050 are expected to be displaced from their place of origin or where they're living right now. So one of the greatest and one of the most important and most fascinating times to me, that were very sad times, unfortunately, but sort of really helped us see through the seam, was during COVID times, where nobody was isolated from what was happening in the world at that time. You might be living in your cottage, but guess what? Business now is international. You might be working on managing your stocks, or you might just be doing your own business here from some faraway island that you own, that you have everything for you. But the whole supply chain of the entire world was affected. The whole consumer preferences, demographic, demand and supply for almost every single thing or service was affected. And the world shut down, and you have to think about what type of world do you want to participate in. And it really, even for the people that are often unaffected by what's happening to the average person, these were people that were affected, significantly from this. And we saw an uncommon and very interesting sense of community develop globally, like a sense of empathy, empathy and care for others, and realizing that, you have to go out there and provide, resources or vaccines, whatever you believe was going to affect the change in this population that's completely not related to you physically or culturally or whatever. But guess what? If you don't cure it in an identified area where it could spread and it affects your supply chain, it eventually will get to you. So I think that opened our eyes to really understand the interconnectedness of our planet. And even if we decide that the future lies in the planets, beyond, that's going to take some time.
Of course.
That's going to take some time. And unfortunately, I don't know if you're familiar, you probably are familiar with the books of Yuval Noah Harari, which I love, brilliant man. He was talking about this idea of the useless generation. And it's very sad that unfortunately our societal systems are going to produce human beings that are inadequately prepared to deal with the challenges of our time. And we're going to sort of have to take care of them, or figure out how to equip them very quickly. And that's why essentially we developed Civit. We realized that a lot of people are understanding that we will need to share more, There's a trend, especially with the younger generations, of wanting to live a more fluid lifestyle, right? You're not attached to anything. You don't belong anywhere. You belong everywhere. You can move seamlessly. You don't have any commitments. However, our world is not designed for it. And certainly not our real estate, So we realize if we create a digital layer that augments the spaces, we can then very quickly adapt to the change in demographics, consumer preferences, the utility of the space. We realize that a lot of the space that has been designed for sharing is underutilized because in order to power the next frontier of the sharing economy, we need three things. We need trust, we need tools, and we need rules. And a lot of people either develop rules, like governments, right, on how we're going to share, but they forget that there's a massive social trust problem. And they don't trust the government, and they don't trust one another. And sharing involves people actually coming together and physically or technologically, giving up some of the share that they could utilize for themselves and understand that they must, share with someone else. Like it requires you to, that act of giving up. And that act of giving up, whether it's your personal space, whether it's your ownership of the entire state, whether it's your physical appropriation of something, whether that's for you represents status or gives you a sense of fulfillment in some sort of way, the accumulation of goods. It requires you to see the benefit in the sharing experience. It requires you to feel like the person which you're sharing with has either it's going to benefit from it in a way that you see the benefit as well. So you sort of have to invest yourself into the other person's well-being in a way. You have to see that the act of sharing is sort of fair, is mutually beneficial, or in a way, the act of you giving up is giving you another benefit. You have to see the benefit that arises from the act of sharing. And that requires us to create, more of a communal sort of feeling or understanding of the world, where we're invested in one another, where we see that maybe giving up our space to share with others does improve our lives and improves the rest of other people's lives. So the rules, the tools, and the trust. So tools we're talking about in these more complex sort of settings where it's not just about riding on the back of someone's car for a brief period of time or taking their car while they're not using it because they're not there, so there's not much friction, or going into a house while people are out of the house. There's not that many points of friction there. So that's sort of like, okay, an easy thing to do, doesn't require that much sacrifice, that much giving up, right? But when it comes to, plus in terms of your investment, you're also saying, well, I'm also not buying the entire thing. So I do see the benefit of sharing, right? But when it comes to sharing a living space, when it comes to sharing a working space where most people spend most of their day, there's many different complex, components that come into play. People are coming from different cultural backgrounds. They're coming from different sort of upbringing, different just mentalities, different perceptions, different preferences. So managing the complexity of more intimate, intrusive human interaction requires more complex infrastructure. And that's what we're building. So the tools for resource sharing and expense allocation, that takes into consideration multiple factors. You have things like roles and responsibilities management. So as we come together in a space, we're responsible for what and how do we keep each other accountable? So those things are necessary to create a harmonious, sharing environment. But most importantly, trust, right? So how do we reestablish trust? And the way that we're tackling that is by building sort of a hybrid nation where people take citizenship into. Like they take an oath and they move around in our ecosystem in a way that respects a universal value system that we all agree on. This is how we should treat one another. This is how we should treat ourselves. This is how we should treat the place where we're at. And this is how we should treat nature and the natural environment around us. So by creating sort of this hybrid nation where people can move seamlessly into, that's tied to spaces, then we have the ability to create an ecosystem that's more harmonious and that really allows for even further development of the sharing economy. Like think about group mortgages, group lending, creating accessibility on the what has been deemed as the golden vehicle for wealth accumulation, which is your home ownership. Right now, the average home in the United States is almost $500,000. More than 3/4 of our population in the United States cannot afford a home. So you're thinking about like, okay, we're setting 3/4 of our population to failure, to completely being dependent on the system, to never being able to take off, So this is why we're creating sort of the Civit platform based on these 3 principles. A lot of people have tried to tackle this in a piecemeal way. They've either created the tools for resource sharing, but not the trust or the rules. They created the rules, but not the tools or the trust. And I think the trust is fundamental. And this is what we're trying to do at Civit.
Yeah, so I'm not fully yet grasping how are you restoring that trust? Is it basically where you can outsource trust to something like blockchain or something like that, where let's say smart contract, where you don't have to trust someone to do business with? Is that in a similar way? Is that how you guys solving it?
So that's a great question. And the way we're going about it, and again, we don't have all the answers. Yeah. So in fact, the way that we're launching Civit is through this Pioneers program, because we believe that our future needs to be co-created. And everybody needs to be part of it. Nobody can be left out. And people need to have a sense of ownership of their future. It can't be imposed by, top down. It really has to be built from the bottom up. And with Civit, we're empowering, our citizens to co-create a new living paradigm for all. So the way that we reestablish trust is, number one, we're building essentially a digital twin of our citizens and the businesses that participate in our ecosystem. And we have an AI agent, sort of like we were talking earlier, that is going to be your guide and your mentor, that's going to help you navigate the shared living ecosystem. It's going to continue to learn from you. So it's going to ask you, and it's going to engage with you with natural language to not to be your best friend or your AI virtual friend. That's not the point, to substitute relationships with virtual agents. But the point is to actually facilitate the way that you navigate the world so that you feel like you belong everywhere you go. And you can find your tribe, and you can find your space, and you can find the experiences that are going to align with your personal legend, your life's purpose, your shorter and long-term goals. So the way that we reestablish trust is we create that digital twin that essentially is a dynamic universal profile, dynamic profile, where people then have the opportunity to interact with one another in through encrypted ways. So let me explain. We essentially create digital twins of, let's say, 2 people. And when it comes to matching, let's say finding a roommate or finding, your next, best friend, how we're looking at Bumble right now, and we have Bumble for friends and Bumble for partners and stuff like that. But when it comes to meeting other people, what we do is that these chatbots, they talk behind the scenes with each other. They engage in conversation and they find alignment and synergy to sort of create matchmaking at a deeper level. And number one, we're maximizing the compatibility and alignment of people on criteria that's much more fundamental than just interest and what do you want to do this Saturday? It's more so your values, your goals, your purpose, the things that you care about the most. But there's a feedback system, sort of like where Airbnb and rates the host and the tenant, or when Uber rates the driver, or the passenger, where people are going through and constantly getting feedback about how they participate and show up in the community. And it's a way for holding ourselves accountable on how we share, whether we're respecting the code of conduct of the place, whether we are being a good participant in terms of respecting one another and being more tolerant and participating and engaging in the community. So there's a biometric verification that happens before this even takes place. So to get an official passport in the Civit ecosystem, you have to pass a biometric verification so that everybody that you interact with in our ecosystem is verified. It's not optional. It's not a check mark that you get, right? Sure. It's like when you get a passport, just like when you apply to citizenship in any nation, you get verified and essentially you get evaluated anywhere you go. And the way that we incentivize, it's not a matter of creating a score for punishment or something that's going to take away from your experience. The idea is to actually incentivize all of the behaviors that contribute to the formation and management and for a community to thrive. So we do the biometric verification, you have the AI matchmaking alignment at a deeper level, and you have sort of an accountability, an incentive system that allows you to move and have trust with the people that you interact, with the places that you visit, and the experiences that you engage in.
So it's basically you first have to establish trust to your AI agent and know that at every moment it will act in your on your behalf and to serve you in the greatest possible way. And when that trust is built, then you allow that AI help you find other people that you think you will find the most synergy with. Is that kind of the idea?
So the AI agent, yes, in a way. I think number one of the things that we believe in at Civit is radical transparency. So in terms of our algorithms or how the AI agent operates or how it takes your information and formulates perhaps instructions or suggestions or introductions, it gives you the reasoning behind it. So at any time, you could really go into, hey, why did this happen? Or why was I matched to this person? It's constantly providing you the reasoning, right? Like what's behind the scene, what's happening behind the scene, what's a thought process behind it. So you can access that. Obviously, if we did that in every interaction, it would be very, very burdensome. It would take a lot of time. But you could always access it through your portal. So you'll have an opportunity to look at all the insights. And most importantly, we have a governance model for our ecosystem where our citizens participate democratically in how the system takes place and takes shape. So, we have three types of passports. So we have a provisional passport that helps you get your feet wet, and that's free and that's available to everyone to sort of like experience the joys of community. I think that's something that we've lost. And when you talk about this idea of self-sufficiency and people feeling more empowered to live without community, the reality is that I feel like we just lost touch with other people and the feeling of community and what it's like to share your life with someone or be reliant upon someone or have someone that's looking out for you and building with you, co-creating. We just sort of lost that. Like a lot of people just don't even remember what that feels like or look like. So first is to get your feet wet. And then once you become an official member, then you have an opportunity then to access circles and journeys and experiences all around the world and move within this ecosystem so that you have the ability then to live a more fulfilling life, a more holistic life. And then you have a diplomatic passport. So just like in a country, those that reach the highest level of engagement, of that showcase, their commitment to the community, that have a vision for its transformation, they have the ability to sit in the Civit Council. So those citizens are invited to participate in shaping the future of our ecosystem, so they can see exactly what the algorithms look like, or what the AI agent is being trained on, or how the new tools that are being developed. So the idea is to, again, empower our citizens and co-create sort of this new living paradigm for a more regenerative future for all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. So do you think, so we all have traumas and baggage that we all carry.
Yeah.
Right. And oftentimes, let's say we design new systems and we create certain logic and rules to, let's say, control let's say the algorithm is keep watching for hate speech or for other. So hate speech is basically part of it's unprocessed, unprocessed emotions that being just found the outlet to spill out, right? And so the more things that we predefine and say, oh, this is the set of behaviors that you're only able to engage in, you're not leaving any space for those undesirable, what you consider undesirable behaviors to come out. I think we should also be thinking about creating spaces in which that's invited. That's something that is actually, instead of like, I'm afraid to get the rating down and I can't express myself in the same way, create a subsystem that would account for, maybe it's a separate container and almost like a separate score in which you do express all of those things, and that's actually helping you to process them.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's something that we've been thinking about. I think that this is an ongoing iteration process. So we're an early stage startup right now where we have a prototype, we have a functional prototype, but of course we're running this prototype by as many people as possible to get their feedback. And it will evolve and change. And we really hope it will evolve and change. And we hope that our pioneers will take it upon themselves to really shape what the future looks like. So it's an area that we really are interested in figuring out how to make this happen, because everybody has been trying to establish some sort of reputation score. And because of many reasons, I think it's a matter of you need to have a basis for that trust, first of all. It's one of those things that you can't artificially create trust. Like you can't simply just like flip a switch and suddenly I trust you. You need to have some foundation for trust, like some insights or some sort of something that you can grasp onto and say, this is why I trust this person, or I have a good idea, or I'm making an informed decision by trusting this person based on these things. And usually how banks go about this and how, landlords and stuff like that go about making the decision of whether they're going to lend to someone or whether they're going to rent is based on their credit score. And unfortunately, the problem with the credit score right now, number one, it doesn't give you a holistic picture of the person. But also the way that the younger generation now is sort of going about the world, they're not staying in jobs for too long, or a lot of them are freelancers. They're saying that 50% of the US economy is going to go freelance by like 2030. So a lot of them don't have quite those pillars that were considered important to determine someone's ability to repay or be reliable on any sort of way. They're not making enough money. They're graduating with crazy amounts of student debt. So the credit score is not anymore, at least, a good measure of a person's worthiness or reliability in that sense. And we have to come up with something new that's a more holistic way, right, to approach it. Unfortunately, people have a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to like social scores with China's social credit system. But I think a lot of that is because of who created it and who's managing it, right? But if you put that in the hands of people and you figure out a way to come up with a system that's created and managed by the people, then that changes because it evolves with the people. it reflects the preferences of the people and their behavior. So I think there's an opportunity, and going back to what you said, which is a very valid point. How do we allow for imperfect human behavior? How do we create sort of a buffer to be able to welcome people from all levels of consciousness to participate in the ecosystem? Because I feel like what you expressed is very valid, and more so today, because again, a lot of people are operating in survival mode. And when you're operating in survival mode, you're worried about how you're going to live paycheck to paycheck. You're worried about getting your next paycheck. You're worried about how you're going to take care of your immediate sort of most basic fundamental needs. And that doesn't allow you to then figure out or care about other people and how you participate in your surroundings and care for nature. How are you going to expect someone that's living paycheck to paycheck and it's completely overwhelmed, with what's happening right now and all the pressures we're suffering, to start recycling, start thinking about, buying more sustainable toilet paper? How do you even introduce that conversation to someone that has much bigger things to worry about? Like, to them, there are much more pressing things in their life that are actually life or death, So I think it's important for us to really create a system that's flexible and adaptable, and thus allow people to come as they are, and perhaps empower them and equip them to then come from where they are to where we collectively want to be. And that might look different to everyone, and that's the power of AI. Because with AI, we could actually tailor that approach to every single person with very deep insights. So no longer a one-size-fits-all course on how to live in a community, or 6-step process, or sort of silver bullet that's going to simply help everyone come to the same terms.
Yeah, what would you say are other ways how you can see we can utilize AI in bringing more connection with ourselves, with others, with the place, with the nature? What other ways how AI will play that role?
Yeah, I think number one is AI has the ability to take on very large amounts of information and very complex systems and make it very simple. So it could really help us digest a lot of data about ourselves in terms of our behavior, in terms of our preconceptions, maybe help us gain a bit more awareness, first of all. So one of the first things that we do when you enter the Civic ecosystem as an official member is you go through this passport quest. In this passport quest, you basically engage with the Civic navigator that helps you uncover all of these fundamental things about yourself that are so important in helping you navigate the world around you. So helping you uncover your values, your skills, your abilities, your life's purpose, professional purpose, short, long-term goals, talents, so that you know where you can contribute and you don't just go into the world as what's in it for me? What do you have to offer me? Instead of, here's what I bring to the table. This is what I'm looking for, and this is what I'm willing to give in exchange. So AI has the power to really give us some very interesting insights, and also look at all the insights from all other people around us and sort of normalize certain things. Because I think a lot of times when we're living in isolation or self-sufficiency, we just lose the connection to other people, and we just lose perspective on how this might actually be happening to a lot of people around me. And then we believe that there's something wrong with ourselves. Like, it's just, I am alone in this. And the reality is that AI has the power to then sort of gather all of this data from, as long as the history has existed, the internet has existed, that whatever they can feed it, to take large amounts of information from many, 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 many different people and give you insights that will help you understand that this is much greater than yourself, and that it might be a systematic issue that you're dealing with, and then really creating a very tailored approach on how to get from point A to point B. So it has the ability to create self-awareness, but it also has the ability to tailor your journey and to figure out what's most optimal or more beneficial for you in terms of resources or frameworks or ways in which you can go about what you're trying to do, because it can really leverage a lot of, sort of the collective intelligence to enlighten and give you a sense of direction. So I think AI has the power to help us get to know ourselves. It also has the ability to help us find connection with other people by helping us understand our similarities and really helping us uncover. I think there's the whole narrative right now, or sort of what we're talking about, is often what we don't have in common. Sort of the things that we don't agree on, things that bring us apart. But AI has the ability to really also help us uncover and focus on the things that we do have in common, and the things that we could find common ground. So by really utilizing people's digital twins and learning from their behaviors and their experience navigating the ecosystem, it could really help us perhaps uncover things that were not visible to us that are common ground between people. And I think that's what we need to do today, to really find that common ground, to come back together again and realize that we have a lot more in common that we have apart, or in things that bring us apart. And when it comes to nature, it just really help us understand and cater the way in which, to us, connection to nature might look like. And it also could bring awareness of how we participate in nature and the impact that we have individually. AI can help measure sort of your carbon footprint and with very sort of detailed data, and really understand your behavior to help you see how you fit in within the grand scheme of things. So visibility, awareness, guidance, deep insights, I think are some of the ways in which AI can really help foster human connection. And I think it also can foster harmony, because that's another thing. When we talk about AI matchmaking and things, we realize that not every time we can find a perfect match, or in a roommate situation, a lot of like real estate developers, they tell me, well, I have one room left in this co-living. I'm not going to wait around to see if there's a good match, for this person to come in. So how do you use AI from insights of both people to then harmonize the relationship? How to make it work? And I think a lot of people could use that. Like couples could use that, families could use that, everybody could use that. How do we harmonize our relationship? And because we have digital twins of people and we're constantly learning from them, and it's more learning from their actual behavior, not just what they say, right? We really get insights as to, hey, this is the best way to approach this person. This is the angle that you should probably take to this situation. This is probably the most beneficial resolution for both of you. And that not only cuts the time in which that happens, which will require a lot of conversation and a lot of like figuring things out, but it's almost like a shortcut to really harmonize in the most efficient and effective way possible. So I'm just very excited about this time we're living in, because this is like they say, the greatest invention of humankind and the biggest technological advancement. And I'm just really excited about all of its potential applications. But that's definitely one of them.
For sure, yeah. Myself included, yeah. I'm also very excited about the use cases of using AI in raising your levels of awareness. I've started experimenting with it by feeding it, years of my notes, like lots of notes that I've been taking throughout years, and each note has a date, so it also understands the progress, like how I've evolved over time and things like that. And so now with bigger models like Claude 200K model or something like that, you can feed all of it at once, and it's able to give you some very insightful data about yourself. It can give you, a description of who you are, what your patterns are, how you've been evolving over time. So I'm already experiencing a great usefulness in this domain of increasing self-awareness with AI tools that we currently have. And as they say, right, the tools, the AI tools that we currently have are the dumbest that will ever be, right? And so in a few years, it's going to be extraordinary what you can get out of like a few years of notes feeding into it, and it will just tell you the whole shebang. Like, it will tell you everything that you need to really be working on, focusing on. It will give you like a MRI, very detailed MRI scan of your personality, and that's why I'm actually very motivated to record as much of my speaking and of my thinking, knowing that that's going to be a very useful way to self-reflect. I've even ordered there's this company called it's called Rewind, but they branded to, I think it's called Limitless now. They have a like a little device that you can attach to your you can wear it like this, or and it can record up to 100 hours in one battery charge. So you can basically record the entire life experience for 2 days straight, and then recharge it overnight or something. And so I see the future in which we are actually recording the entire life experience, and it's feeding it into your personal, hopefully local system. Let's say you have trust to Apple to store your private images, right? We've built that trust over time. Would you trust, let's say, Facebook or maybe Google? They have a very different business model. They sell your data. That's why we don't trust them. But somebody like Apple, I think it would totally be, I would totally trust me putting, at the same level as that I trust putting my photos. Obviously, it's not an ultimate 100% trust. There are always breaches and other things. But I trust it enough to put out all of my, let's say, voice notes and conversations, and have a bank of knowledge or of experiences that I can tap into later myself as an extension of my memory, of my cognition, to surface up whatever concepts and ideas that I need right at this moment. It's so useful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you know what I'm concerned about, though, is that, of course, like any innovation, when it comes out, I think it reaches a point, and we're seeing this magnified over time. It has a compounding effect, where the way that we're going about innovation is far surpassing our understanding of its implications and how to control it and regulate it. And I think what's happening is that there's always sort of this in-between group of people, this sort of early adopters or people that go through the initial adoption of this technology, right, unable to fully understand how it's affecting them or how to use it properly, or how to regulate it. And it's creating this sort of shortcutism culture where people and sort of creating more or not allowing us to really dive deep ourselves in our own quest for our understanding using our own capabilities. I think I remember going back when I was in elementary school, if you needed to learn about a subject, you had to actually go to school, right, or you would go to the library, usually walking. You would get a library card. You would have to physically take a book out. You would have to read it to then sort of formulate your opinion, to then discuss it and bounce it back with your professor. And then they would sort of guide your interpretation of it, right? So I guess the locus of information or the the power dynamics and who holds the information has changed vastly. But at the same time, there's a responsibility that comes with owning the information, right? I don't fully believe we've understood the power of our information. Yeah. And what worries me is that now people don't quite have to figure things out. They don't have to learn how to figure things out. They simply just plug it into an AI chatbot and it will figure it out for them. And what I worried about with this whole idea of recording every single instance of our experience is that we essentially will completely outsource our reasoning capacity, completely outsource our sort of feeling attached to that reasoning capacity. Because I feel like there's so much of our thinking that's impacted by our human experience and having a physical body and having biochemistry and, genes that express or react in certain environments. So that is something that we perhaps, I don't know if we'll ever be able to transfer to our digital twin, let's say, that's making all the decisions for us and doing all of the stuff for us. But I'm concerned that we're sort of dehumanizing the way that we communicate with people. People now, even on WhatsApp or text messages, they use a chatbot to send a text message. You see the younger generation sitting around in a table communicating through their phones. So it's really, it sort of serves, I guess, as a cautionary tale. What we've seen in some of the movies like Her and some of those things of our reliance on technology. We can definitely use it to optimize, our lives and everything we do. But we also have to think about what sort of power we give it, and what role do we leave for our humanity to play into it. I find myself completely disconnected from social media. I'm only on LinkedIn because I have to, because I'm raising money for my startup. So I'm forced to sort of have some sort of visibility, I guess, and participation. But the most centered, the most grounded, the most peaceful I've ever felt are the times where I disconnected from social media. Because I don't think we're designed or wired to exist yet in a digital environment. When you mentioned the need for community and people not really needing community anymore, to me, it's like this desire to connect with other people is simply coded into us. It's part of our biology. It's part of our human experience. It's a need that we as human beings have. I think the time that we're going to get to when we don't need community anymore is when we integrate into a machine that's going to essentially take out from our, biology or reasoning or within our brain, is simply going to shut down that area of our body. Until that happens, I think we will need other people, and we'll feel the need to connect. I'm not saying that they won't get a time. We're already making transplants and putting computers in people.
Yeah.
But I fear that time.
For sure. I mean, I believe that innate human quality is connection to other humans, and I don't think us figuring out how to simulate this human function or that human function will lead to the future in which we are able to completely replicate all of the human function, including social experience, where you don't need to connect with other humans anymore, because I believe that our human essence is not just a physical vehicle in which we navigate this world. Even though even this vehicle needs connection on like biological chemical level. But I think even on the essence level, on the this spiritual level, we still need connection to other spirits, other energies who are co-sharing this human experience. Before I wanted to comment on where you were saying, we want to make sure that technology doesn't become a crutch in our human experience, that we're outsourcing too much of our capability. And I certainly agree that there is a boundary of usefulness of any technology or any concept. We just have to be aware where that boundary is, and also be aware of what those negative externalities might be. That doesn't mean that, technology tends to take away some of our agency. For example, we can't navigate without Google Maps anymore. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we should get rid of Google Maps and really try our best to navigate without it. It's the level of thinking is becoming more abstract. Yes, maybe AI will help me to recall certain information at a faster rate, but that just means that I've spent less cognitive energy on memory recall, so that now I have a few concepts that I've been able to recall, and I'm on a different abstraction layer to come up with something new. So that's just one of the benefits of having it, enhancing your cognitive ability, not to become like a machine or something like that, but to be able to experience more of life. You're able to hold more insights or more understanding at one given moment that could give you new insights and new aha moments about what life is.
And that's the key. That second part is a key, right? So you're freeing all of this energy or capacity, time, resources. It's what you do with them. Right. So a lot of people now are seeing AI as, oh my God, I don't have to work as much anymore. So we're going to all go into a 3-4 hour work week.
Right.
Or we're just going to sit and manage the machine. And we can do that from anywhere while sipping on a margarita by the beach in some exotic destination. Instead of, now I have all this time to actually put my talents to good use and actually make an impact in the world and channel them in a way that gives me a sense of greater purpose and fulfillment and makes me feel more connected and helps me fulfill my civic duty and my responsibility towards others and the world. And actually, I feel like the times demand more of us. The times are demanding more of us. And a lot of people, because I think people are reacting in different ways based on their reality. Mm-hmm. So people that right now are, let's just say, already privileged, that have a good education, that have the opportunities, that have the means to 10x their life, they see the machine as a way to get there. And they're like, oh my God, I can do so much more. Whereas the people that are suffering for so long because they have to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs, they have to, to make ends meet. Now they see a relief. And it's sort of like, okay, now I'll just let it do it for me. And I'm just going to sit back and finally get my rest. I'm finally going to live the life that everybody else seems to be living according to social media. So it's sort of like, what do we do with sort of this optimization, this sort of leveling up of our skills, of our awareness, of our understanding, of our reach? And that's our challenge. That's the challenge of our time.
Yeah. I think definitely the key is bringing people closer or helping them finding their purpose. There's no point of you saving someone's time if they don't really know what to do with that extra time.
100%.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have so many things I could do with extra time. And I know a few people that have a long list of things what to do with their extra time. I wish I had more time, but it's one of those things that if you have more time, you work even more. Like so what's the point? It's very interesting. I think it goes back to our sort of the engine that's motivating everything we do here at Civit, and that is that meta connectivity framework, that we understand that we must first know ourselves and we must first connect to ourselves to then be able to understand how to participate and navigate the world. And I think a lot of people are occupying a lot of their mental energy and capacity in, again, survival mode, that's shutting down all of these other areas of our brain that perhaps help us look into ourselves or free the time and the energy that it requires for you to take a deep dive on a self-discovery journey and take the time to figure out what is good for you. But I think that that's seen as a bit of a luxury these days. Mm-hmm. It's seen as a bit of a luxury because I think systematically we've just we've gotten rid of the space that allows for that in people's lives. And you see now a generation that's making that a lot more of a priority. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it also takes off from the sense of responsibility. It's like, okay, so now I want to live not attached, ever growing, ever developing, and I'm not going to commit to anything that's going to limit my growth. That's going to limit my expression. That's going to limit my fulfillment. Mm-hmm. And then you sort of, you're going to have both. Like you have to be operating on both planes, right? It's a constant process. And we say this meta connectivity of connecting to self, to place, to others, and to nature, it's an ongoing process. Because connecting to nature is going to help you connect with yourself. It's going to help you connect with others. It's going to help ground you. So it's an ongoing process. And I think we actually need to make that and even work it into our curriculums, in school. For example, mindfulness and self-discovery and really equipping people with a stronger sense of understanding and belonging of who they are, so that they can go out in the world and not simply follow the crowds or follow the economic or political interest or follow in the trap of whoever's trying to manipulate their attention.
Yeah, I agree. It's been an honor. I think this is a good time for us to start kind of wrapping up, both of us. So I think it's a good time. So maybe mention where can people find you, find your project, and read up more about what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. So we're at civitlife.com. Civit is CIVIT. And by the way, Civit comes from civis, which is citizen, and civitas, which is the collective of citizens. So we're creating a platform to help the individual integrate into the collective and find their place in the world. But Civit Life, it's our website. It's coming up in the next week. We've been sort of operating in stealth mode. So that's going to be, I guess, our first entry to the world. I highly encourage everyone to obviously join our Pioneers program if they want to be part of the co-creation of a new living paradigm, a more regenerative future for all. And that's about it, because right now I don't actually have any presence on social media until further notice. Mm-hmm. So feel free to reach out to us via our website. And if you see me around in Miami or wherever I am, love to connect.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.